Good morning, afternoon, everyone. How are you? Dr. Michael Spencer, empowering pastors and leaders. We want to welcome you to the training today. I want to remind you as you begin about the conference. That's the Empowering Pastors Summit. It begins March 19th through the 21st. This year we have some phenomenal speakers. We have Larry Stockstill. What a giant in the faith and overseer and apostle, and is over mega churches, as well as he pastored mega church. And then we also have Bishop Rick Thomas, my bishop out of Margate, Florida. And he has worked and was on the board of ORU, a personal friend with Oral Roberts, as well as he was on Youngie Cho's board in Korea, which was the largest church in the world. And he also is a pastor and a bishop down in Florida. He will also be with us, and he really focuses on finances and how God wants to increase your church, increase you, pastor, and leaders, so that you can do more for the kingdom financially. And then also I'll be speaking. I'll be doing one of the evenings, and we just want to encourage you, make your way out. Pastors, I want to remind you to bring your wives and your staff. Why do we encourage you to bring your wives? My wife has a ministry called Empowering Pastors' Wives. And there are many pastors' wives who don't receive ministry. They're kind of on their own. And we want to encourage you to get them connected with that ministry. It is going to be powerful. When you register your wife for $49, this is what we do with it. We take that money and we reinvest it into your wife. So actually, it's costing you $49, but we're reinvesting it back into your spouse. My wife takes them out. The pastors' wives takes the pastors' wives out and blesses them. They get manicures and pedicures and gifts, and we actually give more than $49 back because we believe not only in you but also in your spouse. So I'd encourage you also bring your staff. They will be blessed. They will grow. They will be challenged. And what's exciting is you'll have them paralleling you. Not just you have to go back and to teach them all over again, but they'll be running with you because they're in the same meetings. So March 19th through 21st, you can register today by going to empoweringpastors.com, and I would encourage you to do so right after this teaching. All right, we're in the phenomenal book called The Flip Side by Flip Flippen. I love this book. Now, what I want to remind you of is that you should go to his website. And if you go to his website, his name is Flip Flippen, F-L-I-P-P-E-N, and go to his website. I believe it's called the Flippen Group. And yeah, I've got to start over with that one, dude. We're going to have to make sure we edit that one out. Okay, but I believe that is what it's called. I'm not sure. Go to Flip Flippen's website. And what's really cool there is he actually has tests you can take that help you evaluate yourself. And it'll be a tremendous blessing. But everybody should be purchasing the purchasing the book. Many different ways. Amazon.com. You can go to Barnes & Noble. Get your copy, because what we cover here isn't everything that's in the book. This is just an overview to get the essence out of the book. Okay, we've started talking about getting past those portions that hold us back, and how every one of us need to learn how to change. Turn to someone and say, I love change.
I love change.
Yeah, we know that's not true, but we love change. Change is powerful because without change, you'll always be the same individual. Now, we've all talked about the different tests, the temperament test, and we've talked about personality tests. And many people they take those tests, and that's as far as they believe they can go in life. But I want you to know that is not true. With Christ, you can be anything. With God on your side, you can do anything. Don't hold back in your life. You can grow and mature and do great things for the gospel. A lot of the different constraints in our lives, and I just want to go over them real quickly. So let's just shoot to the first one again if we can. And that one is called bulletproof. That is an individual. A person that is bulletproof is a person that always believes they're right and never believes they're wrong. The ostrich is the person with low self-esteem. We have the person that is a marshmallow. That is an over-nurturing individual. We then went into, after that one, we went into the critic. Oh, my goodness. How many of you know a critic? They're rough to be around. Critics, they're harsh, nitpicky, and they're difficult. Today, we want to start with iceberg. And the iceberg is a low nurturing individual. You ever been around people that You get around them, you can't read them. Have you been around somebody you just can't read? Yeah. I mean, they're so cold to other people that they don't care whether you feel good, feel bad. They're just in themselves, just cold. They're not a nurturing individual. So on your first fill in the blank, here we go. It says the iceberg. Your fill in the blank is low nurturing. These are people who, whether because of wounds or simply because they were trained, they are, next fill in the blank, cold towards others. They don't want people to know them. I have found this is usually, and many times, actually pastors in ministry, many pastors become low nurturing, especially with the more wounds that they have suffered. The more wounds, pastors, I've found that you've suffered, you retract into yourself to go into protection mode. And I want to let you know that that is one of the worst places you can ever go to. There are many salespeople who have made so many cold calls that have received so many no's that instead of continuing to press forward, they become low nurturing and they become cold towards others. So I want to remind you that this is not a positive constraint. You need to make sure that you break out of this constraint if this is what it is. Now, with that, I do want to do an amazing pitch for my wife's book, and it's called No More Hurt. If you go on Amazon.com, you can purchase it, No More Hurt by Pastor Rhonda Spencer. If you are a low nurturing individual, an iceberg, because of the wounds you felt and carried in your life, then you need to get healed up inside. Everybody in this room and everybody online, everyone watching, you deserve to be healed inside. And that doesn't come just by sitting around. It happens by intention. So be an intentionally desired person to be healed. They are just happy if they're happier. They are just as happy, if not happier, with a book. Now, I remember one time I had an individual who was on my teaching a Bible study. Afterwards, the Bible study, I said, you know, people are saying that you are just kind of cold towards them, you know, that you're almost snobby. And she looked at me and she said, listen, I don't even like people. Give me a book. I'm happy. Let me teach the Bible. I'm good with that. But I don't want to talk to anybody. And I said, well, you're kind of in the wrong business, aren't you? I said, because ministry is about loving people. Love. In fact, God is love, the Bible happens to say. So love should be the drive. So a person who's an iceberg, you're usually finding that it's because of wounds or because their parents were really, they were cold themselves. There was no love in the home. There was no hugs. There was no I love you. There was no passion. There was no compassion. And so either way, there's a need to make sure that there's transition and change in your life. Telling constraints. People will not want to be around you that they're uncared about. Now, an environment, here's your next fill in the blank, number 4. The environment they create as a leader is cold, stale, and sterile. It's like an operating room. What to do? Get in there. I don't care whether you're happy today. I don't care whether you're sad. I don't care if your mother died. I don't care if your dog died. I don't care if you crashed your car on the way to work. Your job, get it done, be quiet. I don't care about your emotions. That is not compassionate. And whether you like it or not, I want to remind you of the levels of leadership that is found in John Maxwell's book, The Leadership. And the first one is called positional. Positional means that you've been given a position, a responsibility. You have a level of authority in that responsibility. But number 2 is when you start making a difference with the people that you're overseeing. What is that one? Permission. And permission. Permission is when people know that you actually care about them, that they're important to you, that they're not just a number, that they're not just somebody in the cog of your business. Personality in a person. Very good. Production. You do not reach production until you have been given permission. So a person who is an iceberg really is hindering their opportunity for production. You can slave drive somebody, push them, drive them, but the problem with pushing and driving them, they're gonna push against you and they're not going to be for you. So as an individual, you need to make sure that your heart is open to other people. And the only way to do that is to, number one, stay unhurt. And you don't have to walk around wounded. People are going to hurt you. People are going to say bad things about you. Things you will get Judas kisses. If you will be deceived, that's part of life. You got to keep your heart supple. A long time ago, learn how to keep a soft heart but thick skin. You've got to do that. If not, you'll become an iceberg. Very lonely people. They're very cold people. They're very distant people. You don't know what they think, what they feel, because they don't care. Trait is the person that's very demanding. Next, fill in the blank. They feel alone, and they're okay with it. Now, it's one thing to be a person that doesn't mind being alone. If you don't like being alone at all, well, then you might have some of your own issues. How many of you got to learn how to like yourself? Nobody here? You got to learn how to like yourself. You got to like yourself. You got to be okay with being alone. I remember when I was first in the ministry, I had a problem being alone with somebody. But you know, the older you get and the more you find out who you are, the more stable you become in your own heart, the more you gain your self-confidence in Christ and in yourself. You learn how to like yourself. You learn how to actually have good conversations with yourself. And that's not a bad thing. A low nurturing individual, they only want to be by themselves. They don't like other people. They don't want to be in a crowd. They don't want your opinion. They don't care if you like them. Simply don't like you. You just got a job to do. Get it done. Create igloos. Most people ask why they're heartless. You ever met a heartless individual? Who's ever worked with somebody like this? You've met somebody, they're just heartless. They just don't care. The people they train and the children they raise will themselves become cold towards others and their feelings. Absolutely. These folks are not dealing with shyness. It's not about shyness. This is about wounds. Most people in this situation are people that have been wounded on a consistent basis. Now, this is prevalent in ministry. And so as pastors, as ministers, you've just got to make sure that you protect yourself about getting bitter. Bitterness is a horrible disease. And I found so many pastors who are great people. And I'm talking gifted speakers, but they hate people. They hate them not because they didn't start hating them when they began in ministry. They hated them because they've been wounded so many times. And I'm not sure, is that, Brother Henry, is that the same in business? Yes, Jay Palmer? No? Josh? How about when you're in banking? Yes, in banking? Yeah. Now, yours is where you're not around people as much, right? You're more working in their yards and in that manner? Right. You're not as people connected? Does that matter? Does the same thing happen with yours? With your business? Not really? So it really does depend. And this is why I really took a little bit extra time talking to the pastors. Because I find this in ministry to be more real than in other companies. But in pastoring, you are placing yourself on the chopping block on a consistent basis. And you've got to be willing to not become an iceberg. You've got to protect your heart. Not that you withhold people. My wife and I have made a decision a long time ago, and that is we're always going to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is imperative in ministry. It's not easy. I didn't say it was easy. Because as the pastors, when I traveled as an evangelist, some of the guys I sat with, honestly, they never interacted with their people. And I'm not talking big congregations. I'm talking small congregations. And the reason they didn't was because they could point out to me all the people that wounded them in that church. I knew one pastor's wife who literally for 10 years now, I arrived, they had already been there 10 years. She was literally keeping a notebook of every wound that they received. So she said, when I leave, I'm going to hand it to them. Let me tell you something. She was a bitter woman. And she was cold to the people. She came in, literally she came in, she was the organist. She came in the moment she had to start playing organ. She left before her husband preached and then came back Sunday night, did the same thing. She was not in any church services. She never talked to any of the people in the church. She became cold. She became stale, literally stale. And what happened was she really wasn't doing ministry. And her wounds pulled her away from her purpose. Your next fill in the blank here is this. It is easier to be all business than to care for others. It really is. You protect yourself from wounds that way, but it's the horrible thing to do. You have to remain vulnerable. I personally would rather be wounded, would rather get a Judas kiss than become stale. Why? Because if you're stale and cold, if you're not going to allow people to enter your life, then you're not doing ministry. Jesus knew, he knew that he was going to be deceived. He knew Judas was going to sell him out. He knew it. He still sat down, girded himself by the loins, got down and washed his feet first. He still washed his feet. Listen, we have got to remain supple in ministry especially. You've got to remain supple. You've got to determine in your heart you're willing to take every wound that comes down the trail. You're willing to be wounded. You're willing to be deceived. You're willing to be lied to. You're willing to get slapped. You're willing to get kissed. You're willing to have people walk away. You're willing, and you're willing to make sure that you get hurt. If you do that, then you'll never lose the joy of ministry. Pastors, so many of you have lost the joy of ministry. You cannot lose the joy of ministry. One of the things that people, when they get around my wife and I, say to us, and we've had it said to us so many different times, and that's why I'm mentioning it. It's not just one person saying it, but many guest speakers that have come in have said this to us. It's so good to see a pastor that finally that still enjoys what he's doing. I love ministry. Ministry isn't easy. Easily become an iceberg. But I made a decision that wasn't an option. So if you're an iceberg, I want you to know that you need to identify this constraint in your life, and you need to make a conscious decision that you're going to get healed. Jesus came to heal the brokenhearted. That you're going to get your broken heart healed and get healthy again. So here it is. If I want you to put checks in the box if it's you. Here we go. People can and should solve their own issues in life and at work. If that's you, put a check. I usually check the caller ID before I answer the call. If it's important, I'll call them back. Yes or no, put your check mark. Some would say that if I'm not the most, some would say I'm not the most affectionate person on earth. Next, I do not compliment people like others do. Here's the next one. Remember, put a check in the box if it's you. I feel awkward when showing outward affection, even with people I'm close to. I do not usually think about helping others. I do not usually greet people, especially if I don't know them. H, people have to ask me what I'm thinking because I can be hard to read. Most people who are hard to read we're getting really close to the iceberg factor. It is not my job to help others feel good about themselves. Oh, I'm sorry. I shut down when I'm around people that I'm uncomfortable with. If any of those are you, write it down. Now listen, if you answered 0, you are not an iceberg. If you answered about 5, you're mid-range, or 10. If you answered 10, 8 to 10, you're an iceberg. And there needs to be change. What can I do? And this is what I love about this book. There has to be a plan to change. Now, how many of you did your homework last week? Awesome. It's payday. Glory to God. Quite disappointed in myself at that very moment. Saddened. Just going to go buy a new suit today. Okay. You need a plan. Everybody shout, I need a plan.
I need a plan.
If you want to change, but you don't have a plan, guess what? You're not changing. If you're not changing, then you're always going to be the same. And change is mandatory. Here's what you need to do if you're an iceberg. Before I go to sleep every night, I need to make sure that I have these two things. Send an encouraging email, phone call, or message. Why doing that? You're demanding yourself to start caring again. You have to demand yourself to start caring. Number two, you're fill in the blank. Affirm someone or give them a compliment. You must affirm people. Now, this is easy for you and I who are not an iceberg. That's a breeze. You know, you walk up to somebody and say, you know, you're doing a great job. But for an iceberg person, that's not an issue. They do not want to give you any compliments because they don't want to open themselves up. Number two, I will stop what I'm doing when someone comes into my area and greet them kindly. Again, for those who aren't icebergs, that's a breeze. Hey, how are you? But for an iceberg, that's rough. Yeah, I still don't like. You don't like greeting people still? No. Are you an iceberg?
I thought I was a lot better than I actually am.
She's getting better. She started as a 10.
You started as a 10 and now you're getting better?
I'm a 6.
You're a 6 now. Well, glory to God. Let's give Mackenzie a hand.
Okay, wait a minute. Can we just talk about something first?
Yes, we can.
I love people. I really do. And I thank God that my heart has changed. But some of these I checked off because I hate the responses that mushy people give me.
Okay, her statement was, she's checked off a lot of those because she hates the response of the mushy people.
It makes me uncomfortable. Like my iceberg face makes you uncomfortable. Don't touch me. How about that? And you can tell it on my face. I'm not an iceberg.
Right? Here's the issue. And that is, if you're not a leader.
Can she give us an example of what she said?
No, we don't want an example.
Hurt someone's feelings.
Oh. Here's the issue. And that is, if you're not a leader, it's no big deal. But if you are a leader, then you have to hear the mushy things. You have to hear the mushy response because not everybody is cold. Not everybody is in order. You know, they might be a marshmallow, and whether a marshmallow likes it or not, until they change their constraint, they're going to give you marshmallow answers, whether they like it or not. This is why change is imperative in every single one of us. Listen, we cannot allow ourselves to remain in our constraints. That is not an option because every one of these 10 constraints is what's going to hold you back from accelerating into the destiny that God has for you. So you've got to be willing. If you're an iceberg, and let me tell you, Mackenzie has changed a lot, and I just want to give you props. Yeah. You know, I mean, you've done phenomenal in allowing God to change your life, and we're very proud of you. But, you know, there are a lot of folks that aren't ever going to change. And that is, I think, one of the saddest things in the world is recognizing that you have the capability of change, but you choose not to change. You choose to keep your constraints. You choose to hold yourself back. You choose to be that, come on, that hot air balloon bouncing across that big field with that long rope and those big, heavy sandbags holding you back from flying where you're supposed to fly. There's got to be a determination in your heart. I must change. Now, I just want to tell you, myself, I believe this is imperative for me too. You know, I believe that I have to constantly change. And in fact, you know, I just started yesterday with a new coach. And this week, he got the information on the church and what the church is doing. But next week, he's going to be grilling me. Because I know, and this is what his statement is, I've got to find out what I need to change in you. Well, you know what? When he said that on the phone, I'm telling you right now, I wasn't like, yay. It was like, hey. But we've got to be willing to go from somebody else's perspective to be able to have true vision in our own life. We are our greatest deceivers. And this is why we have check marks here. Because if you're honest and you check off the right things, you're going to be able to identify your constraints and be able to address them, to be able to get a plan to change them. Why? Because the more balanced you are, the more people you can minister to. The more balanced you are, the better businessman you are. The more balanced you are, the better customer service you can give. The more balanced you are, the more your wife will like you. The more your husband will like you. Amen. The more your kids will like you. You got to be balanced. Here we go. Here's another part. Number 3, spend some time with others and let them know they are valuable. Now, for a person that's an iceberg, that's rough. Because you're consciously spending time with people and telling them, you're valuable to me. I appreciate you. I need you. where, remember, what they do is they shut everybody down. They shut everybody out because they're in protective mode. Now, how do you deal with a person that's an iceberg if they're in your team or on your team? Validate their strengths. Dressing an iceberg, and it's an address that is aggressive, what ends up happening is this: they're not only shutting you down, the deep freeze is coming. So you gotta validate their strengths. When you see that they are being non-responsive or cold, ask them some questions. What do you like? Do you like what I've said? I do apologize if I have a difficult time reading your response. You've got to be willing to address them. Be willing to breach them. They like direct talk, not beating around the bush, right?
Yes.
Right, Mackenzie?
Yes, please.
Now, this is difficult for me because I'm not one who likes as direct. And I'm not one who usually gives straight up direct. I'm going to go around the horn a little bit. I remember the very first pastor I sat under, he told me this. I said, we had a lady who stole $11,000 or $12,000 from the missions fund. And I said, let's call the cops. And he said, young man, let's just take a few moments here. It's better to go in the back door than to bust down the front door. And I said, well, that's stupid. Let's bust down the front door. Let's arrest her and put her in jail. Well, what I didn't realize is that meant we'd be in the paper. We'd be in the news. We'd be all over the place. And this woman would be destroyed forever. She would never be even accepted in her own community. So he went around the back door and he talked to her. She actually reimbursed the church the $11,000. Of course, quit the church. But really, it was quiet. There was sublime, and there was no great noise in the community. The back door. So I learned how to do that. But I've learned by working with different people, you know, sometimes you got to look them in the face. You just got to tell them the way it is. But you tell somebody who's a marshmallow the way it is, and you just melted them. You got to be wise in how you communicate. So with this person, you've got to be straight up. You got to tell them the way it is. If you need affirmation from them, tell them clearly what you need. So if you're an iceberg, I really want to challenge you. You need to get healthy. Again, one more time, I'm going to give the plug because if I didn't believe in the book, I wouldn't do it. We have people that have been wounded for many years that read that book and God healed their heart. My wife's book, No More Hurt. You need to purchase it on Amazon.com. In fact, pastors, if you're online, we're making an actual box. It's going to be a ministry box where you'll get a DVD set, leaders, and also a regular book and a workbook. And you'll be able to actually do this class in your own church. And you'll be able to just, what do they call that when you oversee it? Facilitate. Thank you. You'll be able to facilitate the class, not have to teach it yourself. She'll be teaching it for you. Okay, the next one is called the flatliner. Here's your fill in the blank. Low passion, low vision, no drive. Flip had a friend named David and his son is named Michael. And Michael was struggling with his desire in school and what to do for a career. So Flip said that he'd meet with him for breakfast. So he got together with Michael. When he got together with Michael, started, you know, the kid automatically went and ordered the most expensive stuff and everything on the menu. And he ate it and enjoyed every morsel. Have you ever been around like that, somebody like that? Man, you're taking them out to eat. I'll just do a quick little ethics class. Is that fair? When you go out to eat with somebody, you let your host always order first. Yes?
Yes.
You understand? You don't order the most expensive steak on there if they ordered chicken. Okay? Very important. Just want to remind you, that's just simple ethics. Well, this young man didn't do ethics, and he's sitting there enjoying every morsel. And so Flip asked him this question. He says, so how are your classes going? And Michael responded, well, I had to drop a few of them because I was falling behind and wasn't doing too well in the class. And Flip pushed it a little bit further and said, well, you know, how many did you drop? Or how many are you taking? He said, well, I was taking 15, but I dropped 12. So the kid was down to three credits in one semester. Flip then asked this question. He said, what time did you get up this morning? And he said, well, I was out late, so I got up late. And so Flip pushed him and said, what time did you get up this morning? And he said, well, I had to roll out of bed to come to the meeting. It's amazing. Flip asked Michael what kind of job he wanted to obtain in life. And his response explained was this: I need to find something that will let me work the hours I want and still make good money. I don't like to have too much pressure, and I want to have some time to spend with my friends. I'm not sure what I want to do, but that's the kind of job I'm looking for. He's got vision. Pretty amazing. Has anybody ever met somebody like that?
Yeah.
I have. You know what I found? You can kick them. You can push them. You can empower them. Listen, literally, give them jobs, give them money, do whatever you want, and you know what you're getting out of them? Nada. Why? Because they have to be willing to change this constraint themselves. This is not going to come from an exterior motivation. This is only coming from internal. The change of this individual, the change of a flatliner, is not going to come from your encouragement. It's only going to come from them making a decision that they are no longer going to be a slug. The word slug, if you've ever seen a slug, anybody ever seen a slug? They're slimy, number one, but you see them in the morning crossing the road slowly. Many times they get burned up by the sun in the middle of the road. And that's what happens to flatliners. They end up living with mommy and daddy until they're 56 years old. Why? Well, because they can't afford to live on their own. It's time to recognize that if an individual like this is, if this is you, dear God, we are getting ready to do spiritual CPR to you, because it is imperative that you change. So Flip, I love this answer that Flip responded to him in a very nippy or a very sarcastic manner. He said, I think you ought to consider being a donor. Well, I don't think the kid knew what was going on, but this is what was happening with Flip. Flip needed a heart transplant. And he said, because this young man was wasting his life, he might as well just die and give him his heart so his life can go on, because he was actually doing things in life. Child, this is his response. Ready? Child, you are worthless with what you are doing with yourself. Get off your butt and do something with the talent you have. You have extraordinary potential, but every day you waste is an insult to the gifts you were given. Here's your next fill in the blank. Passion and drive are learned behaviors. Passion and drive are learned behaviors. I taught a class, I don't remember how many, maybe it was a few years ago, on the 10, I think it was the 20 people you cannot help. And I do want you to realize the number one criteria to somebody you cannot help is they don't want to be helped. Every one of us in this room have to be willing to change. If not, listen, it doesn't matter. Somebody could stand up. You could spend $10 million on a training session. You'll walk away and you'll be the same individual. You have to be willing to change. Now, here's the identifications if you're a flatliner. Are you ready? Put a check beside if it's you. People tell me that I'm laid back. B, at work, it is helpful if I have someone check up on me to make me accountable. C, I am a slow starter, but get better when pressure is on to finish a project at the end. D, I think the most people who work really hard miss out on life. E, I'm considered for promotions often. I am not considered for promotions often. F, it is very important to smell the roses. G, no one would describe me as an intense or highly driven person. H, I do not usually offer my services. I will help, but only if pressured. I use my work time to do personal business. J, I really do not know where I'm headed in life or what my potential really is. If you have 0, then you are not, what's that? A flatliner. 5, but if you are 8 to 10, baby, we need to do CPR. What can I do? Here's your plan. If you are a flatliner, if you're watching online and you are a flatliner, here it is. To help me discipline, that word discipline is your fill in the blank. To help me discipline my life, I will take breaks. I will not take breaks at work that I have the right to enjoy. I'm sorry, I babbled a little bit on that. Here we go, one more time. To help discipline my life, I will not take breaks at work that I have the right to enjoy. It's important. Discipline is something that is imperative in our lives. A flatliner stays away from discipline. Now, one of the issues I do find with visionary people is that they're great with the bread, but have a hard time with the peanut butter and jelly. Many visionaries, and that is many people who are running companies, CEOs, have a difficult time with discipline. They're not flatliners, but they have a difficult time with discipline. I think we all have to practice discipline. Amen. Now, we are just coming off a week of, or we are in the middle of fasting and prayer at our church. And I want to encourage everybody, whether you're a Christian or a non-Christian, you should fast. Number one, it's good for your health. But number two, it brings your life in order. You must be able to control your greatest drives in life. If you can't control your greatest drives in life, then they control you. You can never allow the machine to run you. You must run the machine. And that is a real issue in life. So discipline is imperative. Here's the next plan for a flatliner. I'll create a list of tasks for the day and accomplish, that's your next fill in the blank, accomplish the top two with intensity. Now we know what that's called. That's called the Pareto. Everybody should have a Pareto every single day. What is a Pareto for those who do not know? A Pareto is a list. On that list should be your top 10 things that you need to accomplish every single day. You should, according to the Pareto, only accomplish the top two before you move to any other ones. So until those top two are accomplished, you should not move to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. Then you move to the next. Now, there is another book called The One Thing, which is a phenomenal book that builds upon the Pareto principle. And The One Thing says, once you've created your Pareto, your 10 things, now you've determined your top two principles that you must accomplish. You then look at those top two and find the one that is mandatory for that day. And you do not move off the one mandatory until that is accomplished. They say productivity goes up over 30% in every single company when that is accomplished. So a person who's a flatliner has to have a list in front of them, a Pareto in front of them. Number 3, I will be early, that's your next fill in the blank, instead of late to each appointment. Early instead of late to each appointment. Number 4, I will identify, here's your next fill in the blank, I will identify my passions of life, and focus on how they can be integrated into my work life. Now, that's how they have to start bringing change in life. But what do you do when you have a flatliner on your team? Because let me tell you something, a flatliner on your team, you end up doing their work. You end up always pushing them. Listen, if you are the owner or you are the manager of an individual like this, these type of people really irritate you. They bother you because money is coming out of your pocket to pay them. Money is leaving your company and you're having to do their job. But what if you cannot get rid of them? Or you do not want to fire a flatliner if they're on your team? What's that?
Marry them off.
You marry them off. Explain it.
Like Josh.
Like Josh. Oh my goodness, that was really funny. That was a father about his son. He married him off. Here we go. How can I deal? Validate their strengths. You'll find with every one of these, there's a necessity to validate their strengths. Why do you validate someone's strengths? Why do you validate someone's strengths, even though it's a constraint? Why do you validate that? What's that? Why do you validate somebody when they're dealing with a constraint? Exactly. Let's be honest. What do we call it? We call it the Oreo cookie. You know, this, no. I do. I call it a cookie.
Never.
Never.
It's the truth. I call it a cookie.
It's a cookie never. It's okay.
So what you do is you have your outside, you correct them, you encourage them, correct them, encourage them.
PNP, positive, negative, positive.
PNP, positive, negative, positive. You got to do that with every single person, even when they're dealing with a constraint, because they've got to know they're important to you. Validate them. What ends up happening is when you're not validating them, you're always critiquing them. If you're always critiquing somebody, let me tell you, then there's never a way that they're ever going to feel comfortable around you. And after a while, they're not even going to hear a word you're saying. So you've got to build them up. So you've got to critique them after you strengthen them. So here we go. To motivate a flatliner, give them a small task that they can accomplish and then celebrate each victory. I do want to say this one more time, that even though you can work with them, strive to work with them, you will find unless they want to change, they're not going to. Here's your next fill in the blank, number 3. Have realistic expectations for them. Realistic expectations. Number 4, give them guidelines for their production. Guidelines for their production. Now, again, my difficulty with this type of individual working on our team is, number 1, I don't have the time to micromanage in that dimension. I don't have the time, and I really don't want to expend that level of energy, get them motivated enough to do a job. Now, you might want to. That's your decision. I will never do that. That's a decision I made as a pastor. I will never keep somebody on staff who I have to constantly do this with, because at that moment, I'm always chasing them. I don't have time for that. That a little bit of an iceberg. Yeah. Here we go. Number 5, be patient when attempting to spark intensity. That is not my gift. Now, if you are a flatliner, sorry. Does anybody know what a flatlander is? I used to hunt Maine all the time, and anybody that was below Maine was considered a flatlander.
Oh.
So that's the first one. Okay. So does anybody have any questions on a flatliner? How many of you know a flatliner?
Yes.
Yeah. What have you done? Have you ever seen a flatliner change? If you're online, if you've seen a flatliner change, can you talk to the person that's overseeing the chat section and just let me know if you've seen a flatliner change? Has anybody ever seen a flatliner change? You have. You have. Well, how'd you do it?
I didn't do anything.
I didn't really do it.
You didn't do it?
I tried really hard. Our running joke was like, this employee was great. We always said, usually we try to get 110% out of somebody. We always thought, man, if we could get like just 60% out of him, it'd be amazing. And he did change.
And he did change. He did change. Amen. Mackenzie.
My brother decided to change his life, so he forced himself to move to New York City, and now he's working on going back to school for like videography or something. But
awesome.
He did nothing with his life for most of his 20s.
Most of his 20s, he did nothing in his life.
Yeah.
So he made himself go to New York City.
Yeah, he just got sick of his life.
Awesome.
So.
There are flatliners, they will change. And I pray for every flatliner that you will change, because you know what? You're throwing away your potential of life. I do know a lot of people that sit around and play a lot of video games.
Yeah.
And God has given you more. Now, if you're a professional gamer, that's pretty cool. You can make a lot of money and be a good tither. Glory to God. Amen. But the fact is, if that's not your orientation for great success and bringing in large sums of finances, then you're going to need to get motivated. Right. Yes.
What if the individual is someone who's is within your a relative, and they're important to your family dynamic?
What if that individual, a flatliner, is in your family and a major part of your dynamics? Again, it does come to the place where you can only work with them and give them certain expectations and not have high expectations, because you're probably not going to get that. Until a flatliner determines that they want to change, they won't change. And listen, I know people that have been in their 40s and their 50s who have been flatliners their whole life and have only ever mooched. They've never, ever, ever made a life for themselves. And that to me is extremely sad, because God gives every one of us such amazing gifts. And our greatest gifts are not just to keep to ourselves, but to give our gift away. Amen. The next one is called a bulldozer. Overly dominant. Overly dominant. The greatest characteristic of a bulldozer is that they are overly dominant. Has anybody ever been around somebody that is dominant? Dominance, man, I tell you, it's pretty intense being around. I was a youth pastor under two of them. I was so blessed to be a youth pastor under two bulldozers. The first one followed me around everywhere I went, badmouthed me in front of me with the staff. The other one actually slapped me, hit me. It was actually during my wedding rehearsal. My cousin, who was a Marine, offered to kill him. He wasn't saved. And that I got in trouble for the inside of my desk was too dirty, cobwebs in the ceiling. It was really tough being around somebody that was so dominant, but it wasn't dominance because of confidence. It was dominance because of control. That's usually a low self-esteem.
Have you ever noticed a lot of bulldozers are not, I joked with you about being a situational marshmallow. They're a situational bulldozer, like at work. They're a bulldozer, but when you dig in and find out about their personal life, usually they're the submissive at home, or they're somebody else is pushing over them. You notice that? I've seen that quite a bit.
It usually, again, that goes right to esteem. If the wife is dominant at home, he'll be submissive at the house. But where he can find his only place to be dominant and to actually feel worth and validity is to be overly strengthened at work. And the problem with that is it will end up coming to a collision at home at some point in time. There will be a collision or complete submission. The amazing part is that deals straight with an emotional problem. So an overly dominant individual, I've always found an overly dominant is a person who has a low self-esteem. And this is the only way for them to control the arena of life. Here, let's take charge. Now, I do want to say this too. Most great leaders started off as a bulldozer. They get a vision and they're going to go forward and they're going to make it happen. I want to separate this because I think it's important. There are bulldozers because of low self-esteem. They are dictators. They are dictatorial. That's one line of it. Are bulldozers with people with such great passion in their heart. And they're people that I'm going to do this. There's nobody going to stop me. There is an overtaking opportunity. And I don't care who is in my way, I'm going to bulldoze them over. Those are two different types of bulldozers. And you have to deal with them completely different. The person with the low self-esteem, actually, the issue with them is building them up. It's not tearing them down. But a true bulldozer who's in themselves okay. Like they're not dealing with low self-esteem. They're just such passionate individuals, no one's going to stop them. Those individuals have to learn how to put the brakes on so that they don't kill people. Because they'll steamroll everybody. Because, listen, nobody's going to get in my way. Now, I get made fun of often by my daughter-in-laws as I was called a bulldozer by my coach. I actually was a bulldozer without any question. And this church started because I bulldozed. Especially with the style church this is. There isn't another style church like this for distances away. The style that this church was not accepted in this area. Where we believe in prosperity. We believe that God heals everybody. We believe that's God's will to heal everybody. God's will to save everybody. There's not a lot of churches like that in this arena. And in that drive, our heart was very clear. So when we came here, we were mocked. We were we were laughed at. We were the actual churches in the area. We actually had a local. They had a local meeting, and there was a special guest speaker that came in, and they made sure that we knew that they thought we were a cult. So all of this was happening. Listen, no one was going to stop me. I spent my own money to launch this church. We were on TV, doing radio. We did everything we had to do. Holiday Inn. I'm carrying up all the equipment to the second story, carrying it all down year after year. Get out of my way. I'm going to make this happen. Nobody's going to stop me. And you know, you have to be a bulldozer when you're starting your own business. You have to be a bulldozer when you're plowing new grounds. When you're going into a tree littered lot, you've got to be willing to get behind a D8 or a D5 or whatever you got to get behind and plow over some trees to make things happen. But you can never stay a bulldozer. And that is what I was addressed as. When my first coach looked at me and says, "You're a bulldozer. You're harsh, dude. Man, you don't care enough about people. You've got to change." And I really was upset when he said that to me. He said, "You're a bully." Now, I have had staff members call me a bully before, and I really believe that that's what I was. But you know, this was one of my greater constraints. And so I made a determination that I was not going to remain a bulldozer. If you took my stats right now, and you go across all of these 10, I'm usually between 3 and 5 of every one of them. Because I determined, especially as I learned this, I think this was almost 4 years ago that we did this training. I determined that I wanted to be the most balanced leader that I could be. That is a determination that you have to make in your own heart. By taking these constraints, we look at constraints always as bad, but you can look at a constraint and say, listen, I need to balance it out so that I'm completely all the way across on all of them as much as I can be. Now, we know the Bible talks about this. It's called the fruit of the Holy Spirit. Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. What's temperance? As a leader, the greater leader you become more temperate in your life. To where you're an individual that neither good nor bad is going to move you. Neither good nor bad is going to come out of you. You're going to be able to deal with every situation in a balanced effect. That must be your goal. And listen, it's in every believer because the Holy Spirit dwells within you already. So every one of these constraints, no matter which one you are, the necessity is to balance them all out as much as possible so that you are the most temperate individual that people can be around. That should be every one of our goals. As a leader, that is your goal. That means you can handle any type of person around you that you choose not to deal with. That also is temperance. Because you make a conscious decision to do what you need to do to accomplish the task. But as a bulldozer, I was really strong. And that's why we are where we are. The Holy Spirit, but man, God uses leaders. And you'll find any business leader that is not a bulldozer when they started out probably didn't start either the ministry or themselves the business. Because you have to be a bulldozer, especially when you're making it happen yourself. Here we go. They're living stressed. They're difficult to be around. They're difficult to deal with. They believe they have the answer for everything and must have the final word. My wife would attest to that me. They argue to what they want. They run over people. They might be correct 90% of their points, but 100% incorrect in how they deal with people. Here it is. Here's your check mark. You ready? Put a check mark beside the box if this is you. I often finish other people's sentences. Now, I want to quantify that. I mean, even in your head. I'm not talking you're interrupting them and finishing their sentence only. I'm talking in your head, you've already finished their sentence. Number 2, When I disagree with a person's statement, I usually interrupt them to correct it. If that's you, put a check mark. I'm comfortable leading large groups of people by actively taking charge. D. Because I am strong-willed, it enables me to accomplish more than others. E. I am not uncomfortable with heated, intense discussions. F. When someone is talking, I already have in my head what I'm going to say to win them over on my way of thinking. G. I can be pushy, a bit hard-headed, but I'm usually correct. H. If I'm in charge, then I don't want others stepping on my toes. Stay in your role. I. Some say I'm stubborn, but it's just that I have my strong opinions. J. Weaker people should not be in charge of things. If that is you, put a check mark. If you answered 0 to this, you are not a bulldozer. 5, you are mid-range. 8 to 10, hello, we have found you. Now, if you are a bulldozer, what do I do? What do I do? How do I help myself? How do I fix this? How do I destroy or balance this constraint in my life? Number 1, here's your fill in the blank. I will stop giving my opinion. Dear Jesus, that was one of the hardest things I had to do. Shut up. Shut up. It was so hard. I would always give my opinion. Someone would give somebody's name, I'd give my opinion about them. Someone would tell me what they were doing, I'd give my opinion about it. If you are a bulldozer, one of the first ways that you stop being one or balance yourself out is stop giving your opinion. Your opinion doesn't always matter. People don't really even need to hear. In fact, you weren't even asked for your opinion. You don't need to give it. Number 2, inquire during your conversations with others. Am I answering your question? 3, to avoid being seen pushy, here's your next fill in the blank. I will get others involved in decision making. This is one of the things that I did at His Tabernacle Family Church. This is one of the ways that I helped balance this out in my life. And this was difficult. I would have my associate, Pastor Dan Dykes, say to me, Pastor, I'm doing my job. Please, you stop doing my job. Let me do my job, you do your job. He said that to me for a lot of years. I'm doing pretty good. You got to admit, I'm doing really, really good. We are, and we have right now. In fact, I just did it in my last meeting. I went into the meeting. I handled what we call the service meeting, where we go over Sunday service, what we can do better, what we need to change. We went over this week what visuals what does the altar look like? What does the sanctuary look like to the people that are walking in the door? What can we change to make it better? How was the experience? How was worship? How was the preaching of the sermon? Was it received? We go over all of that. But then after that, I looked at my staff and I said, here you go. I'm going to the other room. I think I needed to go to the post office. Have a great time. And I walked out. I believe that was 10:30-ish, maybe 10:40. And I walked out, and they left their meeting at 11:20. Sue came in afterwards. She said, these are the questions that the team has, and went over them. And then she's going to go back and deal with the issues that they had questions concerning. I trust my team enough now that I don't need to sit in there and have every conversation and be in control of every situation. What this did is not only empower them, but it also dismantled one of my constraints, which was being a bulldozer. I will start asking for more feedback. Here we go. How do I deal with a bulldozer if they're in your team? Validate their strength. Here we go. They are decisive. They are strong-willed. They are assertive. They are leadership ability. Now, listen, you love bulldozers because they're the person on your team that when you need something done, you don't even have to tell them how to do it. You just give it. It's going to get done. You love bulldozers. You love bulldozers until they have to start building their own teams. Bulldozers are great in singularity, but man, they have the hardest time building teams because they run everybody over. Number 2, when communicating with a bulldozer, here's some of your fill in the blanks, Ask questions about how they feel and what they think. How they feel and what they think. Number 3, explain when someone else is leading a meeting what the, here's your next fill in the blank, the rules and guidelines are to the bulldozers. Why? Because if you don't give them these barriers, they'll take dominance. Barriers is your next fill in the blank. So rules and guidelines have to be given to the bulldozers. This allows them to know the barriers to their dominance. Very good. Well, the next one we're going to cover next week is called the turtle. How many of you found yourself already? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many of you found yourself already in any of these?
Oh, yeah.
Yes?
I'm pretty even now.
You're even?
Not on all of them, but like so far I haven't had one.
You haven't had one spiking? Amen. Has anybody found one spiking? You don't have to tell us what it is. As you found one spike? Anybody else found one spike in the back? Spike? Yes? Possible? Anybody online, you found one that spiked? These are the ones you want to start focusing on this week. I'd like y'all to go over the ones that we've covered so far, and I want you to show me your levels. This is your homework for the week. Show me your levels. What are your levels? Now, why am I doing this? Because this is going to demand you to go over all of them. Show me your levels. Where are you in your levels? So where did you score in each one up to the bulldozer? 2, 5, 10, 6. Where was your score in all of these? Now, for everybody online and everybody new in the room, what we do is we do homework. This class is for free, but what I do is I ask you to do homework. What that does is that ensures that what I'm asking you to do, you're actually going to do it. If you don't do your homework, I'm okay with that. You just got to pay me $25. Now, how you pay me $25 is very simple. You can go to my PayPal, pastorspencer@gmail.com, and I will thoroughly enjoy every dollar you put in my bank. I am not going to be mad at you that you don't do your homework. I'm almost happy that you don't do your homework. Makes me happy, but you will be much happier if you do it, because it's going to enable you, empower you to bring change and transition to your life. So everybody online, we want to thank you for participating with us today. And we ask that you actually take this and so I want to encourage you. We are going to make a DVD packet of this after it's completed and make it available for pastors and leaders to train your teams. I think it will be a benefit for businesses as well as ministry. Have a great day. Enjoy your life, and make sure that you bring change to your life.
Just go enjoy your life.